Hi, welcome to Client Stories with DNAngels. My name is Amy and I am a search angel with the organization. Today I'm going to tell you about a client who came to us in May of this year, and not only did DNA solve her paternal mystery, but it was also used to solve a cold case murder. So our client was born in 1966 and put up for adoption. The only information she had was a letter from her maternal aunt stating that her biological mother had one other child who was 2 years old, and her biological father was a 25-year-old Marine. Other than that, she had nothing to go by. She took all of the DNA tests through Ancestry and 23andMe to try to figure out the mystery. She was able to figure out, with the help of her daughter, who her biological mother was. Unfortunately, she was not accepting of her. She said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want anything to do with you. You have the wrong person." We know at DNAngels that we have the right person, that you are their biological mother, whether you want to admit it or not. In the letter from her aunt, it did state that the letter from her aunt did state that her biological father was in love with her mother, but we are unsure of the details surrounding the decision for adoption. I mean, she did already have a 2-year-old. She won't speak to the client, so unfortunately don't have any information on her maternal side. She came to DNAngels with the recommendation from a family member who found us at a genealogical event somewhere. She gave her the recommendation. She came through our screening room in May of this year. She did have a half-sister match and some pretty high DNA matches on her paternal side. So when I got her case, I thought, oh gosh, it's going to be so easy. I'll have this done by the end of the night. We're good to go. But as many search angels know, not everything is as it seems. So as I start digging, and me and my wonderful research assistant, Melinda, start digging into the case, we immediately realize that her half-sister's tree is extensive. And there is not one name that is in any of the other matches' trees. So immediately we're thinking this half-sister match must be an NPE, because nothing is adding up here. We spent hours digging through and really struggling to find where these common ancestors are merging so we can find the grandparents. It turns out that the grandparents, after about 8 hours of digging and just nonstop work, we were finally able to identify both grandparents, and they had migrated recently from Poland. So that does explain why it was a little bit more difficult connecting the dots when you have recent immigration and records aren't there. It's really hard to do the actual genetic genealogy that it takes to solve these cases. So we did end up coming up on the grandparents, and when two grandparents merge together, we know that a biological parent is going to be one of their children. They had 3 children and only 1 son, so we knew right then this is likely your biological father. And this is where the story takes a tragic turn. Every search angel main goal is to find a biological parent, and we just hope and pray that that biological parent is alive and is receptive and it just opens their arms and accepts this person, which is not always the case. And unfortunately, with this case, I had to give our client some pretty tragic news, which still hits me in my heart thinking about it. Okay. So unfortunately, in 2010, her biological father, Jerry, was murdered. He was robbed and murdered and found dead behind his house in the woods. This was a cold case. They did have a couple of suspects at the time that they had questioned, and one of them was charged with receiving stolen property, but was never charged with murder. They didn't have any evidence that this man had murdered Jerry. So that man went on to try to cash checks, and he was driving the biological father's vehicle, but they didn't have the evidence at that time. Fast forward 13 years later, and in November of 2023, they were able to open this cold case again, and with the advancements in DNA, they were able to solve this cold case murder. So not only were we able to use DNA and genetic genealogy to give our client closure and find her biological roots, but they were able to use DNA in a forensic genetic genealogy aspect and solve the cold case murder of her father. Amazing. It was really difficult giving this news, and I think anybody who does this understands how hard it is to give the news that, you know, the person you've been searching for your entire life is no longer here. And then to add on top of that, that they were tragically murdered and their case went cold for 13 years is just incomprehensible. It's devastating. And I know the client took it a little bit difficult. She had done a little bit of research after we landed on the grandparents. So they had already kind of figured that out, and she was grieving that when I presented my final closing of the case. But the fact that just a year before, 6 months before, I was able to use DNA to solve her unknown paternity, they were able to use DNA to put this man behind bars. And he was convicted, and he, I believe, is still in jail. So this man was charged with murder 13 years later, thanks to the advancements of DNA. I love DNA. We are here. DNAngels is here because of DNA, and so many cold cases, so many missing persons are being solved because of DNA. So spit in that tube, take a DNA test, get it out there. You never know. You could be helping somebody, right? So let's talk about her sister, her half-sister, Sarah. So Sarah, now we have the task of, hey, Sarah might not know she's an NPE. And an NPE, again, is a non-parent expected. So she has an extensive tree built with somebody who is definitely not her biological father. You two are half-sisters, for sure. DNA shows that. And it is not to who she has on her tree. So we like to provide support and information, best practices on how to approach people when you are coming up with something like that is very heavy. You're potentially shattering somebody's entire life right there. So eventually she did reach out to her half-sister Sarah, and actually, Sarah just recently came through as a client with DNAngels for us to solve her as a companion case to just confirm. So I haven't gotten the full story about Tanya yet, but I do know that her biological mother is not willing to share any information about their biological father. So these are two women who are desperate for information on their biological father, and all they have is a driver's license picture from the article when he was murdered. That is all we have of him. I know that Sarah was able to fly to his state and visit his grave, which is amazing. And sorry. They have a very good relationship. They speak every day. They have met in person. And so one thing that did come out of this is the relationship between these sisters, who had no idea that they were even sisters. Jerry didn't have any other children when he passed away. He was childless. So sadly, he passed away not knowing that he did have two amazing daughters out there who one of them was looking for him, and one of them had no idea. But in all of this, you know, Rachel was able to find Sarah. Sarah has Rachel. They're able to share in this journey together. I know they do plan on meeting up and going to his grave together and going to the town that he lived in to see if they can dig up any more information on him, because all they have is that one picture. And wouldn't it be great if somebody who was friends with him or knew him personally could tell them stories about their biological father that they would have never known if it wasn't for DNA Angels. So anyway, that was kind of an emotional journey. I'm not generally an emotional person, so excuse me if I was a little bit emotional with this one, because it is a case that has touched my heart quite a bit. And thank you for listening. I hope I'm able to do some more client stories when I get a little bit more comfortable, because it is kind of awkward. Give me some feedback, good or bad. What do you want? Hopefully you see my face around here a little bit more doing some client stories, if I can get a little bit more comfortable, because it is kind of difficult telling these stories and putting your face out there in front of on the camera. But I love DNA Angels. I love our organization. Follow us, like, subscribe. You know, we have some really great stories ahead and some really great things happening at DNA Angels. Thank you.